Transportation Commission meeting to order at this time.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Your first item on the agenda is to conduct a citizens' participation period.
Thank you. Can we close that back door? Thank you. This is the first time set aside for public comment. This time is limited to comments on items included on the agenda. Those wishing to speak on a posted agenda item, now is your opportunity. Please come forward to the microphone, provide your comment, and state your name for the record. And I do have two cards. E.T. Snell.
That was the gentleman.
Is he not here right now? Okay, we'll go to Alita Dupree. And
All right.
State your name for the record.
Thank you again, Chair Deborah March. Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her. I'm going to talk about the bus procurement item, as I mentioned on the speaker card, which is in your consent calendar. Again, this is very important, and we've been buying CNG buses for almost a decade consistently. And this is essential because we are still running buses that burn almost straight petroleum diesel. I think there is a little biodiesel mixed in there, B10, I think, last I heard. And part of moving away from that, which is off the shelf, is to get more of these CNG buses, both in the long and short versions, so we can move away from a lot of these old double-deckers, which many of, and if not all of them, are past their 12-year service life. So it's an investment because the hydrogen and the battery buses are not quite here yet. Much as I would like to see them today, we're not quite there. So I think that we have to continue to displace the burning of petroleum through the cleaner natural gas. It is cleaner, and especially by getting renewable natural gas, which is cleaner and better than straight out of the ground natural gas. It's part of a progression. So that's my goal, is reduce the diesel first, and I'd rather have the clean natural gas, and maybe even there's a way to burn hydrogen in those reciprocating engines, I don't know. But we need to do this. I would like for our Decatur and our Flamingo to get the single floor, low floor buses on the route all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. Next, E.T. Snell. And state your name for the record.
My name is E.T. Snell. I'm a clown community activist. Although I didn't show up in my clown costume today, it doesn't mean that I won't. And it's not a veiled threat. I usually do it because I see a lot of clowning around going on by politicians. But I'm new to this board, and the reason I came to speak was one of my things of activism was that two-lane death trap from Barstow to California. And I have some statistics from the Highway Patrol. I realize it's out of your jurisdiction, but I'm coming to here as the spokesman and the consultant for the Nevada Highway Corridor Safety Authority. That's a little group that we're forming. From 2017, this is from the Highway Patrol, from 2017 to present, there's been 211 deaths from Barstow to Vegas. It shouldn't be a death trip. It shouldn't be, the reward is of death to come to Las Vegas. These statistics have been skewed, and whenever I see something, I know I spoke to Mrs. Goodman a couple of years ago about the closing of all the rest stops in California. They're doing it all over because San Manuel, the tribal chairman, James Ramos, was also president of the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors. They control Caltrans or whatever else they want to control. Now he's up in the state assembly. So you guys have been hoodwinked when it comes to expanding that road. I also heard years ago that the money that was supposed to be used to widen that road was sent down to San Diego to build these humongous high-rise overpasses, which were just a complete waste of money. So they've done everything they could. See, San Manuel has I call a political pig trough of money that they buy politicians with. So consequently, you know, we have to put our thinking caps on. We've got to get really aggressive, and we've got to do something political. I would like some help. There's 211 deaths, and then 2,346 injury collision accidents. And I would like to get those statistics and those people. I realize that you guys, as a political body, can't go get involved in California. I realize that. But you can help support us to put the pressure on. I know when I did the recall of Gray Davis, everybody laughed at me. But then I went to Sean Steele, and he just went to ICE and gave them $1 million. So we got some, you know, with me, we've got some avenues that we can take. And they need to beat on the head with a big stick, because these are no more than murders, closing those rest stops, so these 211 deaths. I thank you for your time, and I'm looking for some support. My number is 442-309-6740, 442-30.
Thank you.
Can I repeat
Go ahead.
that without that buzzer? 442-309,
All right.
442-309-6740. Thank you very much for your
Thank you
time.
very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in the first public comment period? Seeing no one, MJ?
Thank you, Chairman. The next item is to approve your agenda. It's in order and ready for your approval.
Any questions or comments about the agenda, or can I have a motion to approve the agenda? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. And that motion carries.
Thank you, Chairman. The next item is to receive the CEO report. And today's first item is to recognize a security officer from our contractor, Marksman. To present this item, we have a video from our Deputy CEO, Francis Julian.
Thank you, MJ. Today we're at South Strip Transit Terminal, and we're celebrating an employee from Marksman, Jason DeCousin. Jason did an heroic thing. He was patrolling the South Strip Terminal, saw somebody that was not feeling well, and gave him medical attention. Turns out that person was having a heart attack, and the customer actually called back to thank us and thank Marksman. The medics actually told him that he would actually not be alive today without the intervention from Jason. So what a great story, and let's go and celebrate Jason. Jason? Yes, hi, I'm Francis Julian from the RTC. How are you?
Hi, pretty good.
Good. Well, I'm here on behalf of MJ Maynard, our CEO, and the RTC board to give you the RTC Crystal Bus for the medical assistance you provided to that passenger.
Oh, wow.
And saved their lives. So I cannot be more proud of you, and I'm sure our board is very proud as well.
Oh, thank you.
What a great action. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Well, to be honest with you, I couldn't really
Is
do it
he,
without my team. So
Jason,
they-
yeah,
they
Jason, are
gave
you
us
here
a
today?
hand Too, so
Well,
I appreciate them, and that's
Jason-
what we do.
Jason
we try
cannot
to
be
do
here
what we can
He's
to help
not.
out as much as we can.
Well, we appreciate everything you guys do. This is really awesome. What a great story. And obviously, our client is forever in your grace.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
What a hero.
What a hero,
Yeah,
truly.
what a hero. Next is a recognition from our cleaning contractor, Silver State Transportation. An RTC customer passed along a great compliment to us when she saw a Silver State employee helping a passenger during his work shift. Deputy CEO Francis Julian has also presented in this video.
Thank you, MJ. This month, we're celebrating an employee from Silver State Transportation, Gerardo Cruz. While it was over 100 degrees outside, Mr. Cruz was actually driving down a route, and saw a passenger waiting for a bus. He decided to stop, give him water. That passenger was disabled, opened the water, and let the passenger get cooled down. This is really, really extraordinary, and we need to celebrate initiatives like this from our contractors. Hi, Gerardo. Good. Hi, my name is Francis Julian. I'm the Deputy CEO for the RTC. I'm here today to honor you with a crystal bus on behalf of our board and MJ Maynard, our CEO. Do you know why? When you stopped and gave that water to that person in a wheelchair as you were on duty, this is such amazing, and this is the kind of customer service that we love to recognize. So thank you so much.
Yay, Gerardo.
I'd like to thank the RTC and the Silver State and the RTC board. I appreciate everything you guys do for me.
It's not an easy job, Gerardo. Congratulations. I think he's here.
Is he here? Please stand up. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you.
Next, we will recognize 2 RTC employees for Superstars of the Quarter. Our first award will be presented by HR Supervisor Tim McGinnis, who nominated one of our Superstar winners, Melanie Sanchez from the Government Affairs Media and Marketing team.
Thank you, MJ. I'm really excited to share that Human Resources team has nominated Melanie Sanchez with the Government Affairs Media and Marketing team, or as we all like to call them, GAM, as Superstar of the Quarter. Melanie has worked with the HR team over the last 6 months to help streamline how we put together our events, presentations, and other internal communications that we use here at RTC. Her organization and follow-up has saved us much time this year, and we truly appreciate all of the hard work that she does for us, for our projects, and helping us move effectively. I'm going to hand this over to Angela Castro, Deputy CEO, and Sue Christensen, GAM Supervisors, to surprise Melanie with this award. Thank you so much.
Hi, come with Sue and I as we surprise Melanie. Let's go. So we have a surprise today. So I just wanted to recognize Melanie. Everybody recognize Melanie?
So this really is a huge honor. We want to give that to you and a testament to your hard work, the amazing things that you have done. HR really recognized you for the help that you've done streamlining their processes, saving time, helping them do all the things that they need to do. So congratulations to you on behalf of our entire team. You're awesome.
Hi RTC, my name is Melanie Sanchez and I work with our Media and Marketing Department. I want to thank the HR team for nominating me for Superstar of the Quarter. We've worked very hard this year to roll out our strategic plan and employee engagement initiatives. I also want to thank the GAM team. You guys are awesome to work with and I look forward to growing with the team. Thank you for your nomination.
She's amazing. Melanie, I think you're here today, yes?
No worries. Thank you very much, Melanie, for your service. We appreciate it. Thank you.
And then finally, our next superstar is from our finance department, Ruth Sandoval. Ruth, are you here today? The award will be presented by our CFO, Mark Trosdahl. There's Ruth.
Thank you, MJ. Today, we are excited to go down to payroll and present the Superstar of the Quarter award to Ruth Sandoval, who does an excellent job with all of her internal and external customers. So we'll go down and surprise her now. Well, Lisa, how are you? Ruth, how are you today? Ruth,
Oh, no.
we are excited to present you with the Superstar of the Quarter award for all your wonderful work and your great attitude and helping everybody with their payroll and working with HR and getting everybody paid accurately. So here's your award and thank you so much for all your good work.
Hello, my name is Ruth Sandova. I work in the finance department. I just want to say thank you to MJ, Mark, Sherwin, my supervisors, Leah, Lisa, for nominating me. I was really surprised. I'm really happy, excited, and once again, thank you very much for this.
Is Ruth
All
here?
right, Ruth, stand up, take a bow. There you go.
Ruth, today is your day.
That's right. That's right. Really amazing employees.
Congratulations.
Oh, they are just great employees. Okay, we'll move on to the state of the system. We do this once a year. We present the state of the transit system to you, and I'm going to turn over to Francis Julian to provide this report.
Thank you, MJ. Good morning, chairwomen and board members. Francis Julian for the record. So we'll go over the state of the system, pretty much all the metrics that we're looking at within the system. First off, let's talk about residential ridership. So this year we actually saw a 32% increase compared to last year. Obviously, we were in the midst of the pandemic, but we're slowly growing back. It's important to note that with the national average, even during the pandemic, other transit systems went way down on ridership because they have choice rider. We have essential riders here, so our ridership stayed solid and is still amongst the highest in the nation in terms of increase. On-time performance suffered a bit this year. We're finally seeing an uptick on the on-time performance. We just proceeded to a service change this week that will help with this. Obviously, contractors are working really hard to recruit new operators that will help this, and I want to salute all the operators that did a fantastic job during the year to help. Productivity by routes, this is basically the number of boardings per hour that we have on the residential route. So you can see in red the pre-pandemic numbers, which was about 38. The good news here is obviously we're still lower, but you can see actually since February of this year, we're steadily climbing back to the full productivity that we were seeing. Our residential revenue as well, we obviously from last year, we saw a 21.1% increase. So once again, good news, we're seeing a trend where we're going. Last May was one of our really high revenue months where we almost matched pre-pandemic numbers. The Strip was affected the most during the pandemic. Once again, since February, we're seeing an increase, nothing compared to 2015. My next slide will actually show this. Not the next slide, the one after, sorry. So for the productivity, same good news. We're seeing a slow pickup back in productivity, so in number of boardings per hour that we're seeing on the bus. But we still have a long ways to go. When we saw all of these metrics, we actually cut one of the lines on the Strip called the SDX, the express route, just reacting to those numbers because the number of passengers weren't justifying the extra service that was actually deployed to better serve our residents. In terms of Strip revenue, we've seen a steady decline over the years on our once profitable bus route, and obviously it included the Deuce and the SDX. Since 2015, it's important to note we lost over 62.1 million in projected revenue as a result of both the introduction of TNC and other modes and the impact of obviously the pandemic. Our total revenue by month, so this includes the Strip and residential. We're actually seeing good numbers. We used to be around $4.7 million a year. We're now, our last month, we finished at 4.5. So once again, slowly but surely, we're coming back. The road calls and summer heat performance, once again, good news. Thank you for all the mechanics and their hard work and the contractors, but we're seeing a decrease in the number of road calls over last year. And heat-related shutdown, we're seeing a drastic decrease, even though, as you saw, ridership came up, and obviously we have more service hours, so this is actually really positive news for our customers. Now let's talk about safety and security. First of all, I would like to thank the board for approving this January an increase in our marksman budget in order for us to increase the number of officers. Right now we're conducting a nationwide study on safety across all the U.S. transit agencies. I'll report back in an upcoming board meeting to talk more about that survey. One of the takeaways we've looked at is the ratio of officers to vehicles, to buses. And what we were taking away from that survey is we have one of the highest ratios, so meaning that we have more officers per bus than our peer agencies. This here is not good news. We know we have a lot of work to do, and we're working really hard. Obviously, passenger assaults went up 28.1%. So we'll be briefing you once in the upcoming board's meeting with that survey on some of the items we're still doing.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Francis. Is this just a raw number, or is this based on number of assaults? per ridership?
So this is a raw number, so meaning that there was 196 total assault in the fiscal year.
And I assume that the ridership is up from last year.
It is.
so
It is as well. Yeah.
not that
Ridership
that
was up.
justifies it.
Ridership was up 32%, but that still doesn't justify that kind of increase. We don't want to see those numbers.
Commissioner?
If I might, through you, Madam Chairman, can we have that on generalized locales? So I mean, obviously, I think both, all the municipalities are knowing general areas where we're having issues. So I'd like to see if, at the time that you're ready for it, just the locales and the ridership routes, not a particular number that this is 107, but this is the route that goes to some area.
Yeah, we definitely have that data.
Thank you.
And we'll share it with you.
Thank you.
On passenger assault, once again, one assault is always one too many, but because of all the investment that you as a board approved, specifically the driver enclosure, then the extension of the driver enclosure, the new camera system, we saw a 15.8% decrease in passenger on operator assaults. Once again, we're still trying to work to minimize those numbers. As I mentioned, one is always one too many. Game Day Express, thanks to the Clark County Department of Air Quality, what great numbers. We had 60,000 riders for the Raiders last year for a first year introduction of a service, and the Golden Knights 54,000, so we're looking forward to kick off this season this Sunday.
Wonderful.
RTC On Demand, we started, actually, it's our one-year anniversary this week for the RTC On Demand. As you know, we did a really slow start to make sure our operation was good, but I'm happy to report that we provided over 27,000 trips on that service, and it's on a week-to-week basis that the service is actually growing.
Whose neighbors are those?
I'm wondering. Transit advertising revenue for both bus shelters and buses. We pay for the maintenance of the bus. That increased by 19% this year. So once again, a good revenue stream, and it's nice to see that number going up. Now let's talk about Paratransit. Paratransit ridership is actually going up really high. So the numbers here stop in June. In July, for the last 3 weeks of July, we were basically at 90% of pre-pandemic numbers. So we're almost back to full ridership in our paratransit services. Now, if we look at the on-time performance, I'll overlay the ridership. Obviously, we see a dip in January when we had the Omicron surge, but on-time performance was low. We were able to correct it and come back to above the 90% of being on time. So. Senior transportation, so the senior services that we operate, we saw a 6.2% increase. This fluctuates year to year, but still we're always happy to see those numbers and those services getting utilized. This is like a little fixed route system to go to from senior housing homes to grocery stores or pharmacies. Our veteran services went up by 18%, so this is a free service for our veterans to go get medical aid. So once again, we went from the pandemic, but really happy to see that our veterans are utilizing this service. And the mobility trained customers. These are the customers that we're training, either students, seniors, or people that are on paratransit that are capable of going on fixed route. So we go to the mobility training center, and we have a team that actually trains them on how to use the bus. During the pandemic, once again, it was really hard to do the in-person, but we saw an 83% increase. And we trained basically 394 clients to be able to utilize fixed routes in lieu of paratransit or other modes.
That's great.
The ride on demand, so this is for paratransit. This is the Tango Car and the Lyft program. So since its inception in 2018, we saw 124,000 rides. Our average cost on this service is $20, so way a much better cost for us than regular paratransit. We actually saved, since the inception of the program, over $1.6 million compared to regular paratransit, which, once again, same-day service for the participants. So last year we started a partnership with CCSD. We call it the RTC Ride-On program. So we clocked in 142,000 trips with students. What excites me the most in this is the non-school fixed route. So we're capable of tracking when students are using their pass, either to go to work or to go to have in leisure. So we had 15,000 of those trips. This is really inculcating transit culture in our youth. And I wish and I hope that those numbers are going to go up this year. We're expanding the service by 4 schools this year.
Wonderful.
Could I ask a question there?
Question for you.
Thank you. I'm so glad I sit next to the chairwoman. The routes I know that we started for the schools was in the Spring Mountain area, is that correct?
Yes.
And so when you add more schools, is that going outside to another school area, or is it just expanding from that?
No, so it's different school. So we work with CCSD when we plan the routes to make sure the students don't have too long to walk. And it's sorry, and it's a safe drop-off. So we expanded to different school, and in the Southwest, they're actually using the on-demand service to go to Desert Oasis. But now we have over 14 schools that are in the program.
And is this age reduced, student reduced rate?
It's free. It's free for the students. So CCSD is paying for the pass because this is in lieu of their school bus.
Costly,
yes.
Right. Wonderful.
And are these predominantly high school students?
Yes, it's high school students. The program last year was only with high school students. There's talk by CCSD to have middle school, but that would probably be at the second semester. And students basically have semester passes, so it's being pushed. So they only have one pass, and they can use it anytime they want.
Thank you.
Wow, that's great.
Go ahead.
Technology use, so our RTC, so our app was downloaded 864,000 times, 32 million scans. We sold over 11 million in sales on that app. So this is actually really great. It helps with the operation. It's first of all, it helps the customer because they've got wayfinding in the app. And then for the dwell time, so when the bus stops at a bus stop, it's much quicker to use the app than pay with money. Customer engagement, we did over 400 events this year to engage with our customer. We conducted over 7 surveys, and in the survey, we reached out close to 28,000 of our customers with the survey. So what did the survey say? So 8 out of 10 customers are satisfied with the bus service on fixed route. These numbers are lower than what we used to have. We know we have a labor shortage right now, but we're working on it. But customer identified that the bus were operated safely. So once again, kudos to the drivers to do a good job. Ease of finding our buses and running on schedule. And once again, we know we have work to do with the labor shortage right now and the limited schedule, because on-time performance and frequency are always the things we need to work on that our customers are telling us. On paratransit, 9 out of 10 customers are satisfied with the service. What they're the most happy about, once again, is being safely secured in the vehicle. Once again, kudos to all the drivers. The route coverage. So last August, we actually expanded the zone, so it's good to see that was recognized in the survey. And trip scheduling, now we have an app for paratransit as well, so it's much easier for them to schedule their trip. Driver being friendly and helpful, we're actively working on this with our contractor right now. The on-time performance is a concern, as it should be, and customer care representative responsiveness, we're working with our customer care right now to address some of the comments that we've seen in the survey. And finally, the operator engagement. During the year, we did over 15 operator focus group, and those focus group we actually address issues. So from signal timing, where we're working with David and his team to change some of the timing of the lights, bus route scheduling, sometimes cutting branches, reaching out to your jurisdiction to help with lighting. So these are always valuable information. Actually, last night I was doing one. I always love to interact and get the solutions from drivers that are driving the routes each day. And this concludes my presentation. I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners, comments? I just wanted to, as you were going through the slides, I noted, obviously, there's costs associated with operating our program for the disabled and seniors. And so I think that the strip historically covered the cost of operating those systems, and that's not the case any longer, so that's having an impact on our budget.
It absolutely has a major impact on our budget, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? MJ?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Your next item on the agenda is to receive the Nevada Department of Transportation's Director's Report from Director Christine Swalla.
Good morning. Fair warning, I got a long report today, sorry. And just heads up on what it's going to include. It's going to be my normal update. In part of my normal update, I'm going to include an update on where we are with our annual work program and the STIP. And then I'm going to transition to our consultant who is leading our advisory working group on sustainable funding to give an update on that progress and where we are on that. So bear with me, it's going to be a little bit long. As I do every month, I'm starting with safety. And, well, for the first time this year, we have a 0%. We're up 0% compared to last year. It's still 211 people have lost their lives on our roads this year. Comparing to last year was the worst in a decade, so I don't know that that's the best benchmark to look at. And unfortunately, Clark is not part of that solution. Clark is up 19% higher than last year at 142 lives lost compared to 119. That's 23 more than last year. I should also note that in terms of pedestrian fatality, that was also already trending higher this year than last year compared through the end of July, and that was before earlier this week, the crashes that happened earlier this week. So unfortunately, Clark is up compared to last year. I do want to note that the top contributing factors continue to be impairment and speeding. So last month I talked a little bit about speeding. This month I'm going to talk about impairment. The chart you see here is showing us what we know in terms of substance impairment, substance involvement. It's roughly 55% and growing in fatal crashes in Nevada. And this actually notes the operator, so it includes drivers, pedestrians, or bicyclists because impairment affects all of our modes. And you can see there was a slight dip in 2018. However, we have continued to increase since then. And from 2020 to 2021, we saw an increase of just over 19%. This chart is, I will acknowledge a bit of an eye chart. So I'm going to, and I also recognize that not everybody may be able to see the difference in colors, so I'm going to walk through and tell you what each of the colors mean and also where they stand. So if you're looking at the 2016 numbers alone, the blue on the left is a blood alcohol content of 0.08 or more. The light orange next to it represents marijuana-only impairment. The middle one, the dark blue, is other drugs, so any other drug other than marijuana only. Oops, sorry. The dark orange next to that, so now we're like second from the right, is polysubstance, excluding marijuana. So if there's multiple substance impairment but no marijuana. And then the last one is polysubstance including marijuana. And I should note that you can see the numbers have been changing over time. So when you just look at 2020 and 2021, the substance with the highest percentage of increase was alcohol, with a nearly 24% increase. Next highest was other drug with 23, polysubstances at 11.7, followed by any marijuana. You should note that the marijuana increase by itself increased the least at 2.7%. So what we're really starting to see is that many of the operators are mixing marijuana with other substances. So it really is an increase in that polysubstance, whether including marijuana or not. And so we really need to be working and vigilant with our partners to help increase this, this part, the battle of impaired driving. Should note, often I come and I talk about our role as providers of the system, engineering as a key factor in making our system safer, but this is one of those where it truly is some of our other E's, education and enforcement. And so working on trying to figure out how to fix this and really looking at how do we make sure that our law enforcement officers and the rest of the enforcement system can help us in combating impairment on our roads. I did want to talk about one thing where we are a little bit ahead of the game, and I'm excited about this. Earlier this month, the Biden administration announced the PROTECT program. The PROTECT program, promoting resilient operations for transportation, efficient and cost-saving formula program. It is really focused on resiliency, and you may all recall back in 2017 when flooding caused us to lose the bridge outside of Mesquite across the Virgin River. Recognizing that, when I started with the department, I actually challenged the team to really dive into and develop a resiliency plan, to look at the data that we have, determine where we need to be investing to make sure that we don't lose critical infrastructure in the future. So we have already started developing our resiliency plan, and now this program has come out, and we're looking forward to being able, because we are more prepared, to being able to use that information to apply for grant funding. I should note that when we jumped into this resiliency program, we learned that there were data gaps outside of our sphere. So we have our transportation network, but there wasn't a statewide floodplain or flood risk mapping for statewide. And so our consultant has actually developed that outside of our sphere, and that is going to be able to help the state as a whole be better prepared. And so we're excited about this program. Now some project updates. I've been reporting on this, it seems like forever, but it's only been like a year and a half, and we are almost done. So I just want to point out, though, that as part of this project, we have taken down and rebuilt 2 of our structurally deficient bridges over Eastern and Desert Inn. As you know, we have the best bridges in the nation, and now we should have even better bridges because we got 2 of the structurally deficient off the list. We've also rehabilitated those freeway structures, some of which were 50 to 60 years old, to make them safe in the event of an extreme seismic event. And we've added a new southbound lane. So we are very excited for this project to be done, and I anticipate that it will be done before our next board meeting, which is months ahead of schedule.
That's great.
New project that's just now getting started is our 515 and Charleston project, which will widen and reconstruct Charleston between Honolulu and Sacramento, including providing better sidewalks and lighting for the pedestrians that use that corridor, and neighborhood-specific landscaping, as you can see on the slide. We are also going to be adding auxiliary lanes in both directions between Eastern and Charleston on the 515, and adding dedicated turn lanes to the overall interchange. The project was awarded in March, and crews broke ground on the actual part. We awarded early action with some of the demolition required for some of the residential properties that we acquired. And so the actual construction started on August 1st. It's expected to last 460 working days with anticipated completion by spring of 2024. And we are hoping that it will reduce delays around the Charleston curve and also reduce mainline crashes as a result of the project. You're going to be hearing a lot from me about Tropicana in the next couple of years. I want to make sure that you're always aware of what's going on, when it's going on, and why it's going on. So you've already started seeing construction on I-15. The first phase of work, as I think I said last month, will include the installation of the 10 new automated traffic management signs between Tropicana and Warm Springs. We're really thankful that we're going to be able to deliver these as a first item of work, because that will help us manage the through traffic on I-15 during construction. We anticipate there will be ongoing lane closures on Tropicana between Dean Martin and Polaris beginning early September through February 2023. The flyover will be closed for 16 months starting in January 2023. Well, we gotta take it down to make it better. The north half of the Tropicana Bridge is currently anticipated to be demolished and reconstructed starting in early 2023 through fall of 2023. And we are, of course, actively coordinating with concurrent construction with our local agencies. We're having regular conversations with Clark County. I know Clark County has a lot of work going on in the area, and also really looking at all of those very highly attended and highly anticipated events that are going to be coming during the progress of this construction, so working with our area stakeholders. This past week, we launched a new mobile app for both Apple and Android devices. You can sign up for traffic alerts and look for restrictions in the area, check progress, and explore pictures and videos from the project. Just search I-15 Trop in the App Store or the Google Play Store. All right, now I'm going to get into the phase 2 of this presentation, the work program and the STIP. I'd like to point out that both the work program and the STIP are currently on our website for public comment through early next month. We focus on the work program here today, which includes all projects that NDOT leads, while the STIP includes all projects that are federally funded or regionally significant, but they may not be projects that we are leading. A lot of that funding is sub-allocated directly to the RTC, and so there's projects that your local agencies are delivering via that pass-through funding. So we are primarily focusing on our projects. As you may recall from previous years, we prioritize and harmonize our projects based off of the One Nevada Plan. The One Nevada Plan has the 6 goals you can see here on the slide. You can see they're weighted sort of different. Preserve infrastructure and enhance safety are, of course, our top 2 priorities. There are 17 weighted criteria that go into each of these, into the analysis and prioritization. We score and rank each project, and then we go into the harmonization. So are the projects eligible for the specific federal buckets of funding? An example is there are some funding buckets that are only eligible for communities that are 5,000 or less, right? So if we got to spend that money, so we want to make sure that we have projects that we're spending that money and not leaving it on the table. There are some funding criteria that are only eligible, like the Transportation Alternatives Project funding bucket. So we work to make sure that we're using the revenue that the federal government passes on to us. We look at readiness year. Are these projects ready to go this year, or are they ready to go 2, 3, 4 years out? Dependency, does something have to happen before the other? Performance targets, how are we meeting our performance targets that are approved annually by our board? And geographic distribution, and this is the one I know that we're all the most interested in, but we do look at all of those as we develop the plan. As we talk about this, I want to make sure we're all thinking about the long-range element as well as the short-range element. Long-range right now is beyond 5 years. We are actually working to develop a mid-range element, which is sort of 5 to 10 years out. Because when we talk about this, when we present it to you on an annual basis, I'm always saying, for the last 3.5 years, I come and I say, and then we have in the next, but we want to make sure we refine that and we can have it formalized and on a document so that you can see it. So we're working on developing that mid-range, that like years 5 to 8, 5 to 10, so we're all aware of what's coming. And when you come to us and you ask us the question, can you do this? Bring it forward, push it out. We can have a more realistic conversation about that because we'll have a better idea of the timing on that. But we are focused, our annual work program is this specific year, and then the STIP includes, as I mentioned, all federal projects and includes also those MPO local agency-led projects. Our short-range element is our 4-year work program that does include the STIP projects as well as projects that we are likely to initiate in the next 2 to 4 years. Transportation funding, this is the anticipated transportation funding we are planning on for the next 4 years. I should note, if you look at the total anticipated funding at the bottom of 2023, that does include some carryover funding. Some of that money may be still used this year. It will depend on whether or not we are eligible and how much additional August redistribution funding that we get. We always apply for it. That funding is funding that the federal government wasn't able to obligate. It might be other states, it might be other reasons. And so at the end of the fiscal year, they ask the states, can you use a little bit more? We always apply. We always compete very well for that, and we're working on that. So some of that total for 2023 might actually get spent here in 2022. Also, some of it includes a new program. The bipartisan infrastructure law included a new bridge program. That bridge money needs to be spent by the end of the bill, not necessarily on an annual basis. So we didn't spend it this year because we know we have some bridges coming, and so we're trying to group that funding to spend in future years. We don't normally talk about this direct sub-allocation to the MPOs, so I did want to spend a minute or a couple seconds just talking about it. And you'll note that there are There is a total direct suballocation to Clark of $51.1 million. That's funding that the U.S. government has decided is important to make sure that the MPOs get directly. On top of that, the CMAQ funding is not directly suballocated, but at NDOT we have determined that because it can only be used in the two communities, in the two counties, Clark and Washoe, we actually do internally suballocate that. And we do look at that split on a regular basis to make sure that it is equitable and it makes sense based off of the challenges that the two counties are receiving. So in total, direct suballocation to Clark is $80 million. And that is not included when we start looking at these charts moving forward. You may recall a couple seconds ago, or minutes ago, I talked about those geographic splits. When we talk about geographic splits, there's at least 4 criteria that we consider and think about. One of them is where are the roads in the state? And you can see the lion's share of the roads, and if you think about it, we're a really big state. Lion's share of the roads are outside of Clark and Washoe. They're actually in the rural counties. However, the vehicle miles traveled are in Clark, the population is in Clark, the revenue is Clark. So we have this challenge of how do we make sure we preserve our assets, because many of us do travel on those roads outside of Clark County, and our goods come to us via those roads that are outside of Clark County, and there's economic benefits to the state as a whole. So we do consider all of these factors when we start looking at the geographic split, and we're cognizant and considerate, and we definitely do consider that when we're pulling together our work program.
Can you take a question?
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Question, since 80% or a little bit less probably of the land in the state of Nevada belongs to the BLM, what are we doing to get support specific to the BLM for our transportation and DOT monies through them?
So as
Or
far
is that impossible?
Additional federal dollars.
Knowing the federal government, it's
Public
impossible. But
it's interesting when you talk about this, and this question, I've been asking the team, and you'll see on the next slide, well, even this slide, these are things that we've not had conversations about in the past, right? I think I've shown you this one before, but before me, it was like, here's the money that you're getting, right? And how do we think? And we didn't have a deep conversation about it. So actually, Mayor Goodman, this was one of the questions that I asked my team just last week. I'm like, how much additional revenue do we get back from the federal government than we send? I don't have the answer on that. We're doing that analysis right now, but we're actually looking. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they have the federal program, why the federal fuel taxes go to DC and then they come back, is to make sure that states like ours, large rural states that don't necessarily have enough revenue to support their infrastructure as a whole, that they get additional revenue from some of those other states that have sufficient. As a whole, and I can just say this, we do get, and have always gotten, at least for recent history, more money back than we send. And I think that's the answer, is that we do get more money back than we send to DC, and that does help us support the rest of the roads within the state. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Just looking at this upper left, I just think it's appalling that the federal government is not behind the BLM's ownership of that property and helping us maintain the rest of it more aggressively than we've been doing. Things are changing, as we know, all the time. So if you would just keep that in the forefront and let us know.
I will.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So this is one of those slides that I was saying how we've evolved, and we're now learning and diving into our program a little bit more and understanding how it works and what we need to do to make sure that we are achieving our goals, those 6 goals, making sure that we're in that space, but also making sure that we're thinking about geographic distribution. In the past, you would have just seen that top chart. 55% of the spend and the investment will be in Clark County. However, I was like, well, what does that look like? How much are we making sure we're preserving the Clark County roads? And you can see, so if we break it out, Clark is at 32%, Washoe is at 27%. And if you're thinking back to what I just showed you, like, why is Washoe's so high? It's because, in large part, of that bridge program. So that bridge program, that new federal bridge program, is providing us $225 million in the next 5 years, or in the 5 years of the bill, to preserve or rehabilitate or replace our bad bridges. If you remember, we have the best bridges in the state. Guess where my bad bridges are? They're west of Reno on I-80. That's where they are. They're amongst some of the oldest bridges. The other bad bridges that we have right now are right here in downtown Las Vegas, and we're working on doing that right now, but it doesn't fall within this particular bill. So if you're like, what's going on there? A large part of that is the bridge program, and I have to spend that on my bad bridges. I can't put it on something else, and it doesn't make sense to tear down a good bridge. So that's a little bit of what's going on. I wanted to make sure to highlight that. But, on the limited proportion of the roads that are in Clark, we are still investing 30% or 32% of our preservation dollars in Clark. When you look at our projects that are not primarily preservation, 67% of that investment is going to be in Southern Nevada. And some of that does include preservation, it's just not primarily preservation. I'm going to talk to you a little bit right here about what's in this program. In this program this year is the Henderson Interchange, Lake Mead Boulevard in North Las Vegas, 215, a 3R on Henderson, on the 215 from Henderson Interchange to Pecos. And we're starting to look at, in partnership with the RTC, the next phase of Boulder Highway north of the Henderson investment. So we're happy to be partnering with the RTC to figure out how do we deliver that project. The 3 years after that include the first or the next phase, the early investment in the Downtown Access Project, to really look at the replacement of those bridges. We had anticipated it would be sooner than it is because we're doing the NEPA, but it is there. We're going to start doing that right-of-way acquisition and preliminary engineering. Also included in the next 3 years are the I-15 and Sahara interchange rebuild, Via Nobila, and I-15 south from Sloan to Blue Diamond, the widening of that. So, and the NEPA, we're going to start the NEPA for that next phase of 515. So below Eastern to about Sunset, we're going to start the NEPA to really understand what those projects are going to look like. I know both the city and the county are very interested in that next phase of I-515. So there's a lot, and let me show you what I mean by there's a lot. Dark gray lines on this exhibit are the NDOT corridors in the Vegas Metro Valley. All right. These are the corridors that there will be an investment on in the next 4 years. We are working on almost every single corridor that can be. And I should note this does include some of those sub-allocated dollars. The 215, that northern 2/3 of that, that's not one of our corridors, but it is one of the corridors that is eligible for federal investment, and the county and the city have decided to invest in that. And so you can see that almost everything is going to be invested in some way, and if it's not, for instance, State Route 160 in the southern part of the valley, we just finished that 2 years ago. And what's not shown on here is we're actually doing a corridor analysis on that concurrently. So we're working to make sure that we're keeping the roads up to date. We're working to make sure that we're providing the necessary infrastructure for new growth. And we're also trying to keep everybody calm, cool, and collected as they drive through our construction zones. If you heard me say on the last slide, it includes the widening from Blue Diamond to Sloan of I-15. Tropicana won't be done when we start doing that project. So when we talk about investing more in Southern Nevada, we all just need to be aware of, and this doesn't include all of the projects. I'm looking right here, and I know from my discussions with my Tropicana team, all of the projects that Clark County has under construction in that vicinity right now. As we work to invest in Clark, I'm grateful to this RTC as we talk about cone zones and how we manage these cone zones, because when it feels like everything's under construction, or always is it is, and it's because we're investing to make sure that we keep Clark County going. One last slide on this is one of the administration's priorities has been making sure that we are investing the revenue and the benefit and improving and acknowledging the impacts on transportation to disadvantaged communities. The Justice 40 requirements of the bipartisan infrastructure law set a target that 40% of the benefit of the federal funding go to these communities. So we looked at our projects and we found that 1/3 of our projects are in disadvantaged communities, and 54% of the investment is in disadvantaged communities. That does not necessarily mean that the benefit is for those disadvantaged communities. So we are, as many other states are, working right now to figure out how do we define, and the federal government's helping us, how do you define benefit and how do you measure benefit? As a starting point, though, we are looking at where are the projects, where is the investment, and making sure that we're being cognizant of the impact of our projects on those communities, and where we can, making sure that we're benefiting those communities. And that concludes my piece of this. I am now going to invite to the podium Travis Dunn. He is with our consulting team, CDM Smith, and he's going to provide an update on our Sustainable Funding Advisory Working Group.
Madam Chair, could I just ask a question before we get there?
Sure.
Did I hear you mention interchange at I-15 and Sahara?
I-15 and Sahara, yes.
So it's actually being talked about by the state?
I-15 and Sahara, not I-515 and Sahara.
Okay, so not I-515, okay. So-
I-15 and Sahara, but what I did mention, though, is that as we've had a conversation I committed to in the past, the NEPA analysis for the next part of the I-515, so from Eastern to, I believe, Sunset, is in this document. It will be, and I don't remember if it's 25 or 26, but it is in the document. So as soon as, and as I've committed, when we finish the NEPA on Downtown Access Project, we're going to start the NEPA on that because we need to know what the downtown access is going to look like. And we'll start the NEPA, and then we'll start identifying what those projects are going to look like.
So in my lifetime?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Travis.
Okay. Thank you, Director Swallow, and good morning, everyone. By way of background, I'd like to go back in time a little bit to the origins of this advisory working group on sustainable transportation funding, which was created in State Law Assembly Bill 413 in 2021. The advisory working group was set up to examine and try to come forward with recommendations on sustainable long-term transportation funding strategies and specific funding mechanisms, and to do so addressing the needs of all transportation users, whether road users, transit, bike and pedestrian, while looking at the impacts of new transportation mechanisms, funding mechanisms on social equity, user equity, the state's goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and to incorporate the role of smart growth and land use strategies, potentially at the state level, to address emissions and reduce costs of the transportation system. AB 413 set out specific membership criteria for the members of the AWG. There are 29 members, and you can see listed the criteria that the law established. All of these groups are represented, including the 4 metropolitan planning organizations, including RTC Southern Nevada, represented by your executive director, as well as state and local agencies, business groups, community groups, and chambers of commerce and organized labor. The fundamental challenge that the advisory working group is looking to understand and address through its recommendations is the following. As you all know, Nevada's population is growing very quickly. In the last census, grew 15%, and along with that, vehicle miles of travel grew 34%. Layered on top of that, of course, we have historic inflation, so construction costs are increasing. So the need is growing rapidly, and at the same time, transportation revenues are at risk. At the state level, the primary funding source is the state motor fuel tax, which is a flat tax. It's not indexed at the state level, 24 cents per gallon. About 17.5 of that goes directly to NDOT. Right now, and you can see for about the past decade, it's been flat, slightly declining. The average car in Nevada generates a little less than a penny for each mile that it drives in gasoline tax revenue to contribute to the state highway fund. But of course, as consumers increasingly are purchasing fuel-efficient vehicles, hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles, their contributions to the state highway fund through gasoline taxes are expected to decline rather sharply. Our predictions show by about 50% per mile driven by 2040. So the problem is rising need, declining revenue source, and this is the fundamental challenge that the advisory working group is attempting to address. We've had 8 meetings so far. We began last July. I won't walk through every single meeting. I will just point out that the overall approach to the advisory working group was to start by understanding the magnitude of the problem, come to agreement on principles that the working group could get around toward defining a solution, examine a wide range of alternative possibilities, and then begin packaging possible mechanisms together so that they could come to some conclusions about what might actually work to address this challenge, and ultimately come to consensus or something close to consensus around possible recommendations back to the legislature. We started with guiding principles, and there are 7 that were adopted unanimously by the advisory working group to guide their consideration of alternative funding mechanisms. The first 2 are closely related. Those, of course, are the fundamental objective, which is to find revenue mechanisms that provide sustainable long-term funding in a quantity sufficient to address the needs, but to do so while addressing user equity, that is, different users of the transportation system contributing a proportionate share of the costs that they impose, addressing social equity, looking at flexible funding source. The motor fuel tax and most vehicle fees are constitutionally dedicated to highways, so if there is to be any state role in funding non-highway investments, that flexible funding source is needed. Also looking at the greenhouse gas emissions impact that transportation funding mechanisms might have on consumers' choices with regard to what type of vehicle they drive, what choices they make for their travel, and how much they travel. Lastly, an important consideration was transparency and efficiency of different revenue mechanisms. These were initially combined into one principle. We later separated them. Just as an example, the fuel tax is a very efficient funding mechanism. It's very easy to collect, but it's not very transparent. So we wanted to understand both of those components in any potential future mechanism. Once the advisory working group came to agreement on these principles, we looked at 24 alternative funding mechanisms. And I like to think that, broadly speaking, for transportation funding, there are 3 things you can charge: fuel, vehicle, and usage. And within each of those 3 categories, there are a lot of different gradations of how specifically you can do it. For example, of course, with the fuel tax, there's the opportunity to index it to inflation or other factors. Vehicle fees can be based on a number of vehicle characteristics, including weight, value, fuel economy rating, engine type, and age. Usage-based fees tend to garner the most attention and scrutiny because they're new. These are unfamiliar. So distance-based charging for passenger cars, and weight and distance-based charging for heavy vehicles being direct user fees, and then indirect user fees like taxation of batteries, tires, and electricity that is consumed by electric vehicles. We also looked at a variety of other ancillary funding mechanisms with some nexus to transportation, such as taxes on goods movement, parcel delivery fees, rideshare surcharges, cordon charges or congestion charges, which is most appropriate in urban areas, a carbon tax, a street utility fee, a payroll tax, and land use impact fees. Just as a quick example of how the assessment was done, we took each of those 24 or so mechanisms, and we assessed each mechanism against the 8 guiding principles that the working group had adopted. So taking the example of Nevada's governmental services tax, or GST, which is basically a vehicle property tax, how does that tax perform relative to the 8 guiding principles that the working group adopted? So it performs well against the financial metrics. It's a very robust revenue-generating mechanism. It performs well against social equity because higher value vehicles tend to be owned by higher income households, and therefore they're paying a higher share of the costs. It's a flexible source because it's specifically exempted in the state constitution from the requirement to spend vehicle fees on highway purposes. However, it does not align so well with greenhouse gas emission reduction goals because the higher value vehicle, the newer, cleaner electric vehicles tend to be higher value, so a value-based tax would hit them harder. So this is just one snapshot. You think of 25 or so alternative mechanisms with 8 principles. That's 200 individual scores. We used a red, yellow, green scoring system to simplify it. It was a very long meeting to walk through all of that with the members, but we got great feedback and discussion, and all that input was recorded. What we then asked the advisory working group to do was to think individually and collectively about how to prioritize among those mechanisms a smaller number for further analysis and consideration. And what emerged are the 6 that you see listed in the left-hand column. The 2 sources that were identified as most promising for long-term sustainable transportation funding were distance-based charges for light-duty vehicles and value-based increase in the governmental services tax. The working group also looked at what would be more appropriate in the near term or medium term because the distance-based charge is a new concept. It would take a lot of time to stand up a program like that. So in the near term, relying on the existing mechanisms, the fuel tax, indexing the state component of the fuel tax, and increasing basic vehicle licensing fees were regarded as promising mechanisms should the legislature desire to make any changes to funding levels in the near term. And then lastly, the working group looked at distance-based charging for electric vehicles in the near term with the option of paying a flat annual surcharge, which many states have done, as a way to get electric vehicles contributing to the system while a longer-term revenue mechanism can be stood up. One complication that we discovered just prior to the last meeting of the working group that the Legislative Council Bureau raised for us is that there may not be as much headroom on the governmental services tax, the GST. And this is a lot of text explaining why. What it boils down to is between constitutional restrictions and statutory restrictions on what the rate can be, there were concerns that there may not actually be a lot of ability to generate additional revenue from this tax. LCB has since resolved the question, and there is one mechanism within the statute that can be changed to allow this GST to be a viable source for additional funding. So we'll be taking this information back to the AWG next month. Another issue raised by LCB was with a mechanism that was popular in some of the earlier meetings of the working group, and that is a tax or fee on delivered goods, which could be a flexible funding option. And this is a fee that was introduced in Colorado and just began collections on July 1st. However, it's possible that such a fee could conflict with the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Agreement, which is a multi-state compact. So LCB is investigating what might be done about harmonizing a potential delivery fee with the sales tax. Colorado is not a member of that compact, so they didn't have this issue. On the question of land use, the working group heard a lot of information about what other states have done and are doing to address land use policy at the state level to reduce emissions and improve system efficiency and reduce costs. I think where the working group is trending toward a recommendation on this is to convene a separate working group that's focused on land use. And the reason is, being a transportation funding working group, a lot of the other areas that are impacted by land use strategies, whether it's energy, housing, water, were not really represented at this working group. So the expertise and perspectives were lacking, and the group didn't feel they could make a comprehensive set of recommendations. Next steps, we have a meeting in September where we will compile the findings and conclusions and begin formulating we've already formulated draft recommendations. The working group has provided initial feedback. We'll be going back over those and considering additional feedback at the September meeting. It's important to note that not every finding and conclusion requires a recommendation. So the working group will be taking into account both the technical information that we have provided as well as the perspectives of everyone around the table and trying to come to some consensus around what might be a viable set of recommendations to forward to the legislature by the end of the year. This is the schedule of our remaining meetings and milestones, and with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions you have.
I have one more slide. That's my ending slide that says ends my report. So I think if there are questions regarding the AWG, we should ask those of Travis while he's standing there. And then if there were any other questions on my earlier parts, we can do that after he's seated.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner.
Okay, here we go again. Thank you for the report. I have one question. Knowing that anybody who has one of these or any source looking for power, somebody pays, whether we pay individually in our homes, in our businesses, at a charging station, at the premium outlets, doesn't matter. There is that element. I saw in one of your slides that charging for that power source, which ultimately will have to come, is off the table. That was way over on the right, and it said no longer no longer. So all these on the right, I just quickly took a look at that. I mean, you have to charge your car. You have to charge at this point until something technologically is done So it just miraculously happens at no cost to anybody. So I don't understand, what am I missing here?
Maybe I can break down why some of these mechanisms, that one in particular, fell into that column. Obviously, paying for the electricity itself is on the table. The utility is very much interested in recovering the cost of the power that goes into devices and in the future vehicles. This mechanism would have been an additional tax on the electricity that you've already paid for that would be designed to capture as an indirect measure of road usage of electric cars. The reason that the advisory working group, there were very few members who wanted to consider that one for further analysis is because about 85% of charging happens at home. And so it would be very difficult to distinguish between the energy that's going into the vehicle versus the energy that's going into the other appliances in the home. So the mechanism for actually assessing an additional road-based tax on electric vehicles in the home is some time away from being feasible.
I find it, pardon me if I may, take the home. If we have an electric vehicle that we charge every night, and our bill that comes in from any energy source, Nevada Energy, for example, they have to be able to break down, because there are different places you're using your energy, whether it's for sprinklers or whether it's in your dryer or whatever. So I still don't understand. Whoever is supplying the energy to the building, the facility, the area, they should be passing on that to the customer, whoever it is, and that's where your tax comes.
So the utilities have a meter on your, if you imagine it's a single family home, there's a meter, they measure the total consumption of electricity and you pay a bill for the electricity itself. This concept would have been a separate meter on the charger, which is a costly device to install. It's called a sub-meter that would measure specifically the kilowatt hours going into your vehicle. And I don't know of any homes that are equipped to actually measure that consumption separately.
New construction will.
Through smart meters potentially, but our representative from Nevada Energy has been a part of this conversation and has offered a lot of feedback as to when this might be feasible, but it wasn't seen as something that is viable at a large scale in the near term for home charging. There are a few states that have enacted taxes on public charging stations to capture out-of-state usage or to capture road usage by visitors coming into their state in electric vehicles. They haven't actually implemented this tax yet because they're still trying to figure out how, because there's a whole separate set of challenges with an additional tax on kilowatt hours at public charging stations.
So it's still on the table, basically. It's not off consideration.
I would say what the advisory working group, when they convened and down-selected, these were the mechanisms that they wanted to see further analysis of that were promising. There were only a couple, I think, that they struck all together. It's just that the analysis that we've done already on the ones on the right-hand side led them to believe they weren't quite as promising for consideration at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I think obviously a lot of us are concerned about the conversation around land use and making sure that the state understands the role that local governments play in terms of land use in their areas, in their communities. But certainly we want to work with the state to make sure that we're making decisions that are wise and prudent for our communities and for energy usage and climate change and many of the challenges that we're dealing with. But I think that what I heard was that this was going to be recommended to be a working group, not necessarily a legislative committee, or what is the recommendation?
Well, they haven't made a recommendation yet. It's hard to read the tea leaves. I don't want to get ahead of the advisory working group, but in our discussions about land use, they've basically indicated they didn't feel comfortable making any policy recommendations for the state to take on at this time because they wanted to have local government perspectives taken into account in forwarding any future policy recommendations for state-level land use laws, for example. There may be some elements that they suggest that could be features to include in a working group on land use that relate to transportation. such as accounting for the impacts of development on transportation in a systematic way, which has been a topic of frequent conversation among the working group. But it looks like they'll stop short of making any specific policy recommendations around this.
I think it would be our suggestion that you have local representation then from local planning agencies to be able to speak to those issues. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And I'm certain that you'll be going around and making this presentation to other groups, so we'll probably hear it again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Director?
I don't know if there's any questions for me of the first part, but if there are, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, this concludes our report.
Any questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. MJ.
Thank you, Chairman. The next on your agenda is to approve your consent agenda, which consists of items 5 through 32 can be taken in one motion.
Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. And that motion carries.
And Chairman, the next item is to receive information from our legal counsel. There are no items to discuss. We can move on to the final agenda item, which is to conduct your final citizens participation period.
Thank you. This is the second time set aside for public comment, and when wishing to speak to the board, now is your opportunity. Please come forward to the microphone to provide your comments and state your name for the record. And I do have a number of cards. First is R.B. Brooks, out front, RTC Control. And just for the record, state your name. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the Commission, Madam Chair. RB with Outfront Media, Executive Vice President of Government Affairs. And I've been to many transportation committees around the nation, and this by far is the first one where you guys recognize your frontline workers. These are the men, women behind the scenes that keep the buses running, get the payroll done, the men and women in blue and who keep it safe. And that really goes to kind of the heart of who you are as an agency. We've been in this business for 80 years of transportation, and we're so excited to have this partnership with you. We talk a lot about kind of the pillars of success for an agency, for a company, and for us, it's pretty simple. 1, do what you say you're going to do. 2, meet your financial commitments or exceed them. 3, pick the best product that you have out on the table. And 4, be engaged with the community. And it was really unique, having a conversation with MJ, your CEO. And it's, I know why she's the CEO. Because she's like, it's not about being engaged in the community. It's about being part of that community. And so I know that we're going to be successful because of the attitude that this agency has. Our CEO, Jerry Mel, always says, community engagement involvement is the DNA and the heart of who we are. And you have to have that right partnership. Because we're engaged, we're in a marriage now, right? And hopefully this honeymoon's going to last for a very long time. And so I'm very proud to be a part of this agency. Thank you, MJ, and also Angela, who's just kind of a true leader. And you can tell that an agency is going to be successful by the people that they hire. And so thank you very much, and we're proud to be a part of this, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. E.T. Snell?
E.T. Snell, my website's www.etsnell.com. Ms. Swallow, I want to thank you for bringing those statistics out. There was 50 deaths last year. Look at your audience, that's almost 50, but put a couple kids in there. That's how many people died last year on that road from Barstow to Las Vegas. Now, this year, there was only 7. Mayor Goodman, I want to salute you for taking on this task of that 2-lane death trap. Since you've taken that on, and since you've stopped, and it's seemingly to me, because I live like 2 lots from the 15 freeway, and I monitor that. Since you've taken that on, the rest stops, I haven't noticed any closures. They don't close them anymore. So somewhere along the line, they're not closing those rest stops. And I think that's what attributed to the 7 deaths this year. Although we're not into the year, but it's going to be quite a lot less. So I want to thank you for taking on that 2-lane death trap. California has hoodwinked Las Vegas, especially Las Vegas and Nevada, when it comes to excuse me, when it comes to the 2-lane death trap. Now, there has to be something that we can do to stop the continual closure of rest stops, which I think we've got that under control, but the 2-lane death trap. I think there should be a FBI investigation of why those rest stops were closed, because not only did it happen on the 15, but it happened on the 40 freeway. So there needs to be, I believe, an FBI investigation. I think Caltrans should be held responsible, and I think James Ramos and the San Manuel tribe and their political contributions should be held responsible for what they've been able to do. I think we could put together, if Mr. Sisolak, the governor, declares an emergency because of all these deaths, all these problems, I think if they use inmates to fight fires, they could use inmates to build these roads. And I don't think there's an inmate locked up that wouldn't like to get out at daytime to help build these roads. And I think the Las Vegas Visitors Convention Authority could provide the equipment. And then at the end of the caveat would be maybe a trauma center in Victorville, which is a whole different issue, because it's not a safe highway. Not only is it unsafe to travel, and which I don't want to wake up the people and say, oh, it's not safe to come to Las Vegas.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next is Dennis Hennessy.
Commissioners, staff, Francis, MJ. My name's Dennis Hennessy. I'm a 13-year, going on 13-year bus operators right now for Keolis. Before I get started, I want to maybe thank Francis for at least bringing up some safety and security things in his presentation, but I have 2 questions that I didn't really understand. The first question is, why throw good money in a budget after bad by putting on more marksmen security guards? They don't do anything. They really don't. I've been driving a bus for 13 years. The inactivity and the lack of effectiveness we get out of marksmen, it's like they're not there. So I say maybe cut your budget down on that and make them all in mobile operations instead of driving on the bus. And then maybe take the remaining $2 million you'll save and give it to the drivers and pay them hazard pay, because it's us that's doing it. It's not marksmen, it's us. The second thing I didn't hear any questions from you guys, and you had some questions there. I didn't hear anything about transit police. We've been talking about transit police for 4 years, back when Francis was our GM when he first came in. No transit police, and yet we can't do anything this year because in the Constitution, evidently, we can't have transit police, but the state legislature doesn't meet this year. So you guys are all politicians. Can you do something? Because I'm bringing this stuff to your attention because, like our driver that got assaulted, I want him to get an attorney and place a lawsuit because of the lack of effectiveness by this group. And if you guys don't want to do anything, maybe your cities or county commissions would be interested in the liability here. So we had a driver assaulted, and better yet, we had another driver assaulted, a Keolis driver assaulted by an MV driver. A driver assaulting another driver because he was upset that the bus was delayed. This is the kind of stuff that you guys, it's ineffective. And here's what I don't get. The news media is not involved in this. You guys are flying on your own. Teflon Dons. The news media is not reporting any of this. Well, that's going to come to an end because I'm calling and have been calling every news channel, the RJ. I'm just disappointed in that. One last thing, let's do a Jimmy Lane update. You guys all had homework assignments about Jimmy. Well, he's back. He's out of jail. Last Sunday, he went on to 3 buses on the strip and defecated on all 3 buses to where the bus had to be shut down. A supervisor came to clean it up, but that's okay. We can just go ahead and let him ride. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alita Dupree?
Thank you again, Chair Deborah March and members. Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her. My 3rd time speaking today. Thank you. I'm going to speak about the basics of RTC, as I am simply an ordinary user of RTC. My opinions are my own and grounded in fact, though some may agree with my sentiments. I've been using the airport quite a bit in the last year, and I feel we need to look at something more direct to connect the city with the airport, because I don't have a 1-seat ride from my home. Now, I can't expect a 1-seat ride from the entire city, but the 108 doesn't run very often, and when it misses, it's an hour interval between trips. And there isn't really a good airport connection from the whole of the strip. I can get, it's the CX and the WX, I guess, Westcliff, to go to the airport. So I think we have to do more about making the airport easier to access. And I'm looking forward to more service, but yet the Sahara route has not been brought back to the 15-minute interval. And that's a busy route, and that's my route. And I'm not able to access Charleston as easily as I used to because of the way that the access is from the back of where I live. So I hope we can get Sahara back where it was. And HOV lanes are very important. I'm a person who is disabled and who is different. And if I have some kind of an emergency event, I need that highway open. I should not have to suffer a reduced amount of time to get help because the highway is jammed and we don't have that lane open. So to me, HOV lanes are an inclusive, equity-based protocol that can help people with the greatest needs, such as myself. I'm going to keep advocating and talking about HOV lanes, and I'm eligible to use them because somebody's always driving me around. Haven't rented a car in over a decade, I think. And the fare payment is very important. There's work going on, but we just got to move past the paper tickets. They get damaged, and if you lose them, your money is gone, and so things are being done. But I would like to see the day when we can move away from the paper tickets. I think that if you have a phone, it would be a no-brainer to use the app. I've been using the bus app for 6 years, and there's like 4 different platforms that you can buy bus passes on phones. So I think we just got to get the word out that if you got a phone, there's an app for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in the public comment period? Seeing no one, this meeting is adjourned.